Hola a todas, soy Karina de Nueva Zelanda. Voy a hablar un poco como la astrología de este momento. I'm going to speak in English. It's going to be much easier for me, but a big welcome to you for turning up and being here as part of this amazing event. So I'm wanting to tune in with you around a couple of things that are important at the moment. Like today, the 22nd of July, which is when this is due to go out live, Venus, the planet of love, of beauty, of self-esteem, the planet of our value system, the things we hold dear, our femininity, our sexuality, definitely our uterus. Venus, she turns retrograde and she disappears out of the evening sky, and she will take 40 days to retrograde in the darkness and emerge as a morning star. And that's going to happen around the beginning of September at some point. And so this is a moment which happens every 18 months approximately, and it cycles through a very particular series of astrological signs, creating the shape of a star as it touches each one of these signs, and it goes in this slow progression through many years. But many ancient civilizations and indigenous civilizations have got mythology based around this moment where Venus descends, disappears as an evening star, the brightest star in the sky, because Venus, the planet, she's a planet, actually not a star, but we call her a star because she's the brightest, glowing, sparkling entity in the heavens, other than the sun and the moon. So she's been noticed and worshipped and appreciated and tracked and followed since the beginning of time. And of course our ancestors noticed that she would go so far in the sky towards the western horizon and then just drop out and appear again 40 days later. So a lot of mythology has emerged around this journey, this descent. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And I've also have a song for you that I've written especially for this moment, this year, just to solidify the story for myself, but also for you. So what is Venus? Well, I've mentioned a little bit about the archetypes that she represents, our femininity, our value system. I think that's like a really important thing to be aware of, is that wherever Venus falls in our astrological chart shows us what we like, how we like what we like, what's important to us, and how we do our femininity. You know, so if you have Venus in Leo, you might express your sensuousness and your the way you dress and the way you approach potential partners, and with a lot of drama and a lot of flair. You may really like this part of you to be seen. Whereas if you have Venus in Virgo, for example, she might be a lot more sedate in the way that she expresses herself, and you may have a much more detailed and discerning eye on what it is that you like and what you don't like. With Venus in Virgo, for example, you may be really aware of what you don't like, because Virgo is all about discernment and analysis. So this, you know, starts to pave the way for how we might do our Venus. Venus in Gemini, you may really love socializing with people, and in fact socializing and talking and being able to be seen as somebody who loves to communicate and have a large network of friends, may be a part of your identity with Venus in Gemini. Venus in Pisces may be that you have a very rich dream life, and in a sense, or dream life, or a relationship with the mystery, with the divine loving mystery of life. And you might be very attractive to other people because they can sense in you this ability to dive deep under the waters of the psyche and meet them in a place where there aren't words. So she holds a lot for us. And when she descends into the underworld there's a story about us coming to terms with our shadow, and coming to terms with the shadow side of what we love, of what we like, and to a certain extent our identity, what we have constructed around ourselves, to bolster our self-esteem, to bolster our value system, and to help us feel intact with regards to our femininity, our love, our beauty, the crutches that we may rely on in order to feel strong in ourselves and in those areas of our life. So when we go into a Venus retrograde period, there is an invitation, well, it's sometimes a very loud invitation, to examine the shadow side of that. So retrograde is a motion which, in the general sense, is just a visual thing. It's sort of like when you are pulling up in a train and the train next to you is moving slower than the train that you're on, or the bus or the car. And so as you look out the window and you see that other vehicle moving slowly, it kind of looks like it's moving backwards. And that's a little bit like what is happening now. And when we talk about planets going into retrograde, that's what we're referring to. They don't actually start spinning the other way, but it just appears that way from Earth, from our vantage point here on Earth, because we're traveling at a certain rate around the sun. Venus doesn't often go retrograde, so this is like, you know, every 18 months, this is what she does. And when a planet does go retrograde, regardless of what the planet is, it speaks a lot to, it intensifies the energy, those planetary energies, like those archetypes are intensified in our lives. And they may be intensified because something breaks down, something doesn't work. With Venus, we might have a money issue, or a relationship issue might bubble bubble to a head. It may be impossible to not look at something that's not working. Our sense of self-esteem, for example, or our value system may initially take a dive. We may start to not feel good about something, in order that we see the shadow, we see the negative side, we see the other side, what we're not wanting to look at. And from there, we allow ourselves to come to rebirth ourselves. Because as we face our shadow, we get the strength. It becomes that we have to reinvent ourselves, rebirth that section of our life, so that we can go forward. Because we can't just be holding ourselves to the same set of values, the same identity, the same relationships, the same, not that all of our relationships have to fall apart, but some of them do. And also there are aspects of our relationships which do need to continually shift and change. And so this will give us the opportunity to look at those and make sure that that work is being done. And very often it's about how we are in that space. This isn't about blaming other people for what's going on. This Venus retrograde is occurring for everybody, including us. So it becomes very important that we take responsibility for how our shadow is showing up. So there is a myth, and there are many, but there is one myth that I would like to share with you that pertains to this journey, and it's the myth of Inanna. Inanna was an ancient goddess of Mesopotamia, and she was the queen of heaven, the queen of the upper world. And she was a tricky character, and she had a sister, a woman called Astrological, who was the goddess of the underworld. So here we have these two parts of the self: the sister, who's the goddess of heaven, and the sister, who is the goddess of the underworld. And so they are in relationship, but they are estranged from each other. So Inanna wanted to descend to the underworld. She wanted to face her sister, to face her shadow. And she wanted to do this because she wanted to speak to Astrological about the death of Astrological's husband, which Inanna had also actually had a hand in, But nevertheless, Inanna wanted to descend to the depths of the underworld to be with Ereshkigal while the funeral rites were observed. But in order to do this, it was a very dangerous journey. So first she went round the kings and her brothers and other men, powerful men in the upper world, to work out with them who will have my back if I don't come back, who will send help, who will be there for me if I don't come back. So she went to the first king that she came to and said, you know, will you help me if I go to the underworld? And he said, oh, well, maybe I will, maybe I won't, we'll see how we go. And then so she wasn't, you know, particularly happy with how that was working out. So she went to the next one and said, will you help me if I go to the underworld and I don't come back? And he also said, well, I'll see how things are on the day, you know, like we'll see how we go. What are you going for anyway? And she wasn't content with that either. So she went to another king, a king called Enki. And Enki agreed that he would send help if help were needed. So together with her faithful maidservant, Ninshaba, Inanna went to the doorway, to the gates, to the first gate to the underworld, knowing that somebody would have her back if she didn't return. And Ninshaba, who also holds a special place for all of us, each of us not only have an Inanna, a goddess of the upper world, and a Ereshkigal, a goddess of the underworld, each of us have a Ninshaba as well. Each of us have a maidservant, somebody who will wait for us, somebody who will beat the drum if we need help. So Ninshaba was stationed at the top of the first gate and given the instruction that if Inanna didn't return, Ninshaba was to beat the drum and to go in search of who would come and help. So going through the first gate, Ninshaba, Inanna, who is dressed in her royal finery with a beautiful crown and beads of lapis and golden strands of beads and beautiful jewels around her breasts and a breastplate. And she wears amazing robes and she's really dressed as a beautiful queen. She goes to the first gate and knocks, and the guardians come to the gate and ask what she wants. And she says, I'm here, I'm Inanna, and I'm here to see my sister Ereshkigal. And they say, well, you know that you can never return if you come to the underworld. And Inanna says, well, I'll take my chances, you know, like, please tell Ereshkigal I'm coming. So the guards go and speak to Ereshkigal and let her know that the Queen of Heaven is coming to visit. And Ereshkigal is very emotional in this moment. She has pain inside. She's recently miscarried. She's in a lot of internal pain. She's lost her husband. Her heart is broken. She's really just experiencing the absolute death of so much that she loved, and she's in the shadowy underworld. She is an entity, a woman of grief and misfortune and venting and anger and pain and energy, like she's a vortex of shadowy energy in the underworld. And she says, send for her, but as she comes, lock each gate. And as you open each gate, she must remove an article of her clothing until she enters the throne room where I am, naked and bowed low. So at the first gate, in order to enter, Inanna must remove her crown. And she says, what's that all about? What do I need to remove my crown for? And she's given the reply, you are to remove your crown because this is the ways of the underworld, and the ways of the underworld are perfect. So she removes her crown and she comes through the first gate. And as she comes through the second gate, she is asked to remove her necklace, her lapis bead necklace. And she says, what's that about? And she's told, the ways of the underworld are perfect. And as she progresses through each gate, she is asked to remove her beautiful strands of beads, her breastplate, her amazing waist jewelry, all the things she had. And finally, at the last gate, she's asked to remove her robes, her queenly robes, so that she may enter the throne room of Ereshkigal naked and bowed low. And she does. So she comes into the throne room, the very center of the underworld, the very place where she meets her shadow. And immediately Ereshkigal utters the word of wrath, and Inanna falls dead to the floor. And from this moment, her corpse is taken, and her rotting corpse, it is said, is hung on a hook. So she doesn't come back, does she? And there we have Ninshaba at the top, waiting at the gates for Inanna to return. And upon her lack of returning, she starts to beat the drum. And she sends out the call to the first king. And she says, will you come and help? And he says, well, actually, I'm having a bit of a big day today. She wanted to go down there. Let her wear it. And she sends the call out to the second king, who says, she wanted to go, didn't she? She hasn't come back. Well, you know, we're busy up here, and it was her call. But when she sends the call to King Enki, he says, she hasn't returned? Okay, I will create these two entities for you to take with you. They will help her. And from underneath the dirt of his fingernails, he extracted two entities, two mysterious, invisible forces who could fly through the gates without being detected and without being seen. And these two amazing spirits worked their way down to the underworld. And when they found Ereshkigal grieving and crying, and with her hupe, with her snot coming out of her nose, and her tears and her wailing, and out of the grief of the pain, oh, the pain inside me, oh, the pain outside me, just so much pain. That space that we all know, that space we know when we have, maybe we're coming into our blood, our premenstrual time, maybe we've received a heartbreak, those moments where it's just all too much. And these entities come down and they encircle Ereshkigal and they say, oh, darling, the pain inside, oh, darling, the pain outside, we feel you, we feel you, we feel you, we feel you. And Ereshkigal notices that her pain is being taken seriously by something invisible, but nevertheless it's being taken seriously. And she's so grateful. She's so grateful to be heard and to be seen in her torment, that she speaks to these entities and she says, how can I repay you for this beauty, for this love? To which they reply, well, we don't need anything material, but we would love that corpse that you have rotting on a hook. And Ereshkigal says, well, yes, of course, take it, but she's dead. And they say, we don't mind, we'll take that, please. So they take the corpse of Inanna and they take it back up through all the gates. And as she's returning through the gates, she is given the elixir of life, and she returns to life, and she comes to see the outside world again and to be with her waiting woman, Ninshaba. Now the story goes on, but it speaks a little to the descent of Venus and the mythology, some of the mythology around it, and how when we're at the absolute end of our tether, sometimes this is what is required for rebirth to happen. And of course, as every piece of jewellery is removed, all the different jewellery and clothing items are sitting upon Inanna's chakras, her crown chakra, her throat chakra, her heart chakra. So the symbology of her needing to remove these protective jewels to free her chakras and allow her to, instead of identifying with objects of power, to identify with her freedom, with her release. This is like written into the story as well. There's a lot. You can research the story, Inanna, and find a lot of symbolism there. But this is an invitation at this time, this descent of Venus, this retrograde action. Is a time where we can do that. So thank you so much for listening to this little talk that I've offered you around Inanna and the retrograde of Venus. And I'd like to complete with a song. So this is also very much something that we might do here in New Zealand in Aotearoa. is to finish a song, to finish a speech, to finish a talk with a song. So I've written this especially for this moment, and it's very much inspired by this course that you are being introduced to through this work. Inanna descends to the underworld to meet her sister Ereshkigal. Queen of heaven goes down, holding her breath at the mercy of the goddess of death. Beat the drum, Ninshaba. Beat the drum, removing her crown, passing through the gate, opening her channel, lightening the weight. Her necklace of lapis falls at the second gate, allowing her voice to reverberate. Beat the drum, Ninshaba. Beat the drum. Double-stranded beads at the third gate. Her life force liberates, and bearing her chest at the fourth gate, her heart opens after removing her breastplate. Beat the drum, Ninshaba. Beat the drum. A golden ring at the fifth gate, feeling her way, there is no escape. Measuring rod and line at the sixth gate, instincts attuned to a deep trembling beat the drum, Ninshaba. Beat the drum. Drops the royal robes at the seventh gate, naked and bowed low to meet her fate. Entering the throne room, her life now forsake, a corpse hanging on a hook to break. Beat the drum, Ninshaba. Beat the drum. Inanna descends to the underworld to meet her sister Ereshkigal. Queen of heaven goes down, holding her breath the drum. Ninshaba, beat the drum. Beat the drum. Ninshaba, beat the drum. So, I am Inanna. I am Irishka Gal. I am Ninshaba. And I am the intersection of these energies. Disfruta tu día bonita. Adiós.